Everyone. Thank you for joining our today's live stream to Next Level Accuracy with Astra DB Hybrid Search and NVIDIA AI. I am Preeti Srinivasan, VP of Product Management of GenAI Initiatives at DataStax. And with me today, I'm super excited to have Joseph Fu, Senior Director of Cloud for GTM at NVIDIA. So before we get started, a bit of housekeeping information. So this is live and this is being recorded so that in case we do something goofy, you
Oh, I'm
can
in trouble. I'm in trouble. It's live.
you can replay it and watch it in your free time. And and we have audience joining us from all over the world. I see from London, Poland, Belgium, Southern California, Dallas, Texas, Iraq. Thank you so much for being curious and joining us today to learn more about improving accuracy for your GenAI applications. And if you have any questions, please add your questions in the Q&A tab. So the Q&A tab is where we will be monitoring. Close to the end of the talk, that's where we will be like checking out and answering those questions. So let's get started. So like I said, I'm Preeti Srinivasan, VP of Product Management at DataStax. And I'm going to pass this to Joseph Fu to introduce himself and to speak a few words.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity, obviously, Preeti and the team. And I do love the global group there, right? So again, to Preeti's point, Joseph Fu, Senior Director of Cloud and ISV Go-to-Market, fancy word for, helping the ecosystem in this case, right? Partnering with my friends here at DataStax around how do we use our technology, right? And so that's sort of the day job. And then I've been at NVIDIA for about 3 years, and it's been such an interesting journey and exciting time. And I hope that's why everybody's here to go like, hey, where is Gen AI now? Where is it going in the corner? Because again, 3 years ago, we weren't talking about this as much, right? And that's super, super exciting. So thank you for that.
Of course. So Joe, let's kind of like get started with asking you for more broad vision strokes here. So at NVIDIA, what is the vision for NVIDIA for Gen AI? How are you seeing this evolving? What are some of the perspectives on a software sense as well?
From an NVIDIA point of view, okay. So I'm going to give a little bit of sort of from NVIDIA, right? And obviously, shameless plug for definitely go watch Jensen on his keynotes at GTC, which just happened a month or so ago, etc. Right? But to truly appreciate where we think it's going and where we're all marching toward, and obviously where we're partnering with DataStax here in executing on it, I want to take a little bit into like how we got here. Right. If you speed the journey of how this AI journey came for NVIDIA, a lot of it started early from gaming, obviously. And then it moved to what we're terming the terms you'll hear us talk about is accelerated computing. And really, that was basically high performance computing. Right. It was things like genomics, things like high frequency trading, things like seismic automation, where parallel processing became the gold mine. Right, Preeti? And unless you were in that world, top 500 supercomputers, a hardcore data scientist, that was not really a necessary need. However, then with the advent of computer vision, which again, if you really think about it, is an accelerated computing problem, right? It is around how do I take a bunch of images and classify them? That was sort of that early precursors to Gen AI. And obviously we're all aware, right? I still remember where I was when ChatGPT took off, right? The art of the possible. But if you really peel back the onion, a lot of that was around translations, generative AI. How do I transform? How do I translate from one language to the other? Right. And so that's where we could see it going right now. It's agents, right? We're very focused on helping customers execute their agents, do more with their data, which then gets you to robotics, right? And there's other offshoots like quantum computing, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of the now, and so hopefully what all of you are considering is, hey, how do I actually do more with the data without disrupting as much? And I think this moment in time is one of those that gets us there. And just one last comment on that, for me personally, if I look back to technology, I started in technologies, helping customers deploy and use contact center. Right. And if I look at that space alone, I literally remember where it went from manually transcribing audio recordings and meetings for compliance reasons to technology enabled with nuance. Well, guess what? Now with generative AI, right? Nuance with Microsoft, with OpenAI, it's actually like close to 99% accurate. So if you think about that similar use case, right? And that's what's exciting here about generative AI is what are the things that we've tried to do in the past? What are the things that we've collectively considered, but is technology now at a point where we can execute that? And we think it is, right? And we think it is. And that's obviously why we're so excited here to partner with you, because you're taking it to the world, right? Because our summary is, hey, we're here to provide these components and then working with people like yourself, right, and DataStax to make it easier for everybody to use.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And I likewise, we are super excited to be partnering with NVIDIA and bringing these Gen AI platform to the world for developers and enterprises across the world to build highly accurate applications. Because like, just as you were saying, right, like the accuracy really matters. That's where whether it's your chatbot, your assistants, your AI agents, it matters a lot that you serve good information, the right information, relevant information to the end users, without which the most Gen AI applications just fall apart. And a quick thing, speaking about DataStax. So DataStax is a Gen AI platform company, and we provide like the knowledge layer, like the database as a service with Astra DB, which is a NoSQL DB, which supports like various things, whether vector, graph rag, and like multiple capabilities along with that, and non-vector data as well. And we also have the visual builder called Langflow, with which you can build enterprise AI agents and like RAG applications. So Joe touched upon like some interesting use cases that he sees in the NVIDIA standpoint, like call centers and things and so on. So some of the use cases that we see with like when it comes to customers and prospects. And so maybe this is actually a good time that probably I should share my deck, or else I would just be continuing to having a delightful conversation with Joe and totally not minding to share it all then. So let me pull out my thing. Here we go. Right. So do you see my screen?
Yep.
It's in a presentation mode, right?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So that gives us to what's our agenda today. So we're going to talk a little bit dive actually quite deep into relevance, speak about like what's hybrid search, how it's useful, why in some cases just pure vector search falls short, and then we are going to talk about the how NVIDIA NeMo Reranker, the hosting service that we use on server side with Astra DB, boosts search relevance, and then we'll go into Q&A. In between that, I'll also share a quick demo on how to use hybrid search and NVIDIA NeMo Reranking with Astra DB. So, so speaking of which, right, like before we dive into more technical reasons, some of the use cases that we see quite often with customers, for instance, like where do they want to like kind of improve relevance? They want to improve relevance for their Q&A pipelines. Like take, for instance, healthcare customers. So their end users are asking questions with their chatbot saying like, is Dr. Doe, servicing in this hospital, that time they are not looking for an answer with where Dr. Deer is working, because vector search is kind of provides a semantic relevance in the context, which is awesome. But in certain places, the keywords and the right terms matter for these accuracy of these Gen AI applications. Then think of it in terms of like, recommendations and personalizations, one of the top things that folks build with Gen AI apps. So having the right keywords, the right information, whether it's like, what would be the right Athleta pants that would suit my suit my style. So those are kind of it has a combination of these keyword information and the context as well as part of that. And then in domain specific areas like legal and pharma, so where things there is the domain knowledge that is associated with that, and the keywords and terms that goes along with that. But there are so there has been the huge ecosystem that we're seeing that evolving every day with Gen AI. And there are so many tools and even search tools that were born before this ecosystem. And then they try to integrate with this, but this is an ever-changing one. But rather, tools that are Gen AI native and that actually speaks very well across this, and it's a out of the box solution where you're not trying to use like an older say a search DB, but doesn't have a good integration with your Gen AI ecosystem, and then trying to serve in another place and trying to configure all of these things, or even configuring in your search, right? So these are some of the areas where folks are like, hey, can we have like a single solution that can take care of all of those things? So those are like some of the areas that we hear from prospects and folks on like, hey, how can I improve relevance of my Gen AI apps? And here are some of the problems that we see. So,
and one of those, if Preeti, if you wouldn't mind me chiming in here to Preeti, your question earlier, right? What are we excited about? I'm going to emphasize it, right? You mentioned healthcare, right? And public domain. You think about some of the basic tasks that a nurse or a doctor actually has to do, right? After, they meet 15 people a day, it's closer to 30 where I live here, like poor doctors and nurses, and they actually have to type in and summarize what the activity is and put it into their EMR, right? And a big part of that sometimes is, as you mentioned, what's the language, right? And so right now they're manually doing it, et cetera, but as people are building applications to help automate and digitize really so that a doctor and nurse can handle more, right? Or it could even be the police department. They have to take notes of every interaction, right? Otherwise, when they go to court. So if you think about that, accuracy matters, because right now they're going off of their memory. They're going off of maybe a video camera, a transcriber, but accuracy matters. And to your comment, the language in the police officer versus the lawyer versus the nurse, doctor, totally different. Right. And without this accuracy capability, how do we help them automate? How do we help them do more with less, right? And that's what's super exciting about some of the things you said, because these are the challenges. Gen AI is amazing, but we all know it hallucinates initially, right? And so how do we do it in my domain, right?
So that brings me to Astra DB hybrid search and NVIDIA NeMo Reranking. So as you might already know, hybrid search involves vector search, which is a semantic lookup, lexical search, which is keyword lookup, and then that's sent to a reranker. And this reranker basically takes these results and gets the more relevant results on the top. So that's been around for a while. But why does that matter now? It matters a lot now because just exactly the points that Joe and I have been talking about for the relevance of your responses for your AI agents and RAG-based applications, which are Retrieval-Augmented Generation-based applications that uses your proprietary context to serve your end users. And so that's where Astra DB and NeMo Reranking together improves the relevance by up to 45%. Yes, you heard it right, up to 45%. And I'm going to tell you how that actually works. So like I said, Astra DB has the vector search and the lexical search. Both are based on Apache Cassandra, the database that is known for its scale, for its production readiness, for its speed. So it's based off on that. And then this is where the exciting part is. Astra DB hosts the NVIDIA NeMo Retriever Reranking, which is a LLM-based fine-tuned reranker, state-of-the-art reranker that is hosted by Astra itself, meaning you do not have to bring your own reranker or try to configure any of these hybrid search things. Actually, in fact, I'm going to show you very soon how easy it is actually to just use it right out of the box. And then you can access hybrid search via the easy to use schema-less data API, or the Astra Pi, which is the Python client, and with Langflow, which is the AI agent and RAG visual builder. So before I dive deep into how this works and how I can share a demo, but before that, I want to quickly pass this over to Joe to share about NVIDIA NeMo and give us some insights into that, Joe.
I appreciate that. And to Preeti, to your earlier question, right? Like, how did, from NVIDIA's point of view, right? It really was working with the researchers, starting with computer vision. But as the transformer was coming around, for those of you that weren't in it, and by the way, I wasn't either, right? But if you dial back in, a lot of that was around how do we take disparate languages and translate, right? And if you look at the original paper, and so that was the whole goal of, hey, what is the whole point of that is, we know this acceleration is super important, prepping the data, right? Because ultimately, if you're going to train something that you want to generate something later, you got to prep the data, right? And so the net summary is, here's the data flywheel pipeline, right? And that's what the NeMo platform is, right? For us, it's where we're partnering with, all the different Gen AI builders, all the different things of, hey, depending on which one it is, are you trying to solve the data prep side, the curation side, right? Deduplication of the data, image classification. Customizer would be things very similar to, hey, I'm taking a base llama model, but now I want to add in my own data, right? Because of kind of the examples that we were giving earlier. And then when we look at evaluators, evaluating different models for a different response, different use case. And of course, we're going to go a little bit deeper. Demo speaks the loudest words, retriever, right? We think this is the fastest and most accurate retrieval mechanism. Guardrails we all hear about in the industry, right? If I'm building a workflow, I don't want it to answer questions that are very off, right? And then in NVIDIA NeM, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's how do we make it easier to deploy in production. The net summary of this is one level above the GPU, right? And from that perspective, if you need accelerated computing for whoever's building it out there, we're trying to make it easier and easier at NVIDIA, as opposed to, hey, I need someone that knows how to almost get to the kernel level, right? And obviously in this case, we partnered, Preeti, with you and your team, right? Because they've made it even easier, right? Some of the benefits of Astra, some of the benefits of Langflow, and that aspect of, hey, how do we do these things where it's almost like a no code to that point, right? Because this piece of it, you still need code, but it's, we feel it's the best outcomes for that. And just to give you an example, shameless plug, Hugging Face, today or a week ago, we just launched our Llama Nemotron, right? Which is, right now, and again, this keeps changing, right? But right now, at this moment in time, it's one of the best performing reasoning models out there. Now, obviously, we're partnering with everybody on different piece parts, but that's sort of the NeMo platform in a nutshell. Right. And then, oops.
Is everything all right?
So NeM, as an extension of that, if you look at the NeMo platform, as I mentioned earlier, that gets you closer to, what I'm going to call almost pro code, right? You kind of got to understand what you're doing with the data. You have to, get a little bit deeper into the code. And for us, NeM was then even further packaging it so that it's easier for an enterprise or an ISV in this case, for example, Preeti and her team, to really just incorporate this into your code, right? And at that point, we're doing a lot of the security patching. We're doing the underlying, patching and updates so that you can just worry on what's more important to you, as opposed to how do I optimize the interaction between the GPU, et cetera. And so from that perspective, that's what NIMs are in a nutshell, right? It's how do I take this to the more classical Python developer or even the web developer in that perspective. And then last slide, real quick, before you go to the demo. From a NIM perspective, right, this is where you'll start to see NVIDIA start to publish a lot of these, right? And so build.nvidia.com, for those of you that are a developer, it's the best place to just go kick the tires, right? The one I mentioned earlier around Llama Nemotron, or some of the components that Preeti's going to talk about, you can go kick the tires and just run it on our website and go test it and see if it makes sense for your code, right? And in this case, obviously, we're super excited because, the Cassandra audience here, hopefully a lot of you are very familiar with Cassandra and some of the amazing technology that DataStax brings. They're incorporating some of these, as I mentioned, into an even easier way to use it, right? And so it gives you that option. Do you want to buy, partner, build? But from a NIM perspective, we currently have about 100 plus NIMs out there, just different ideations, right? And the best way to view it is they're different levels of the Lego block, right? Until you build that complete offering. And that's what, we've effectively done here with DataStax.
That's exactly it, Joe. Thank you so much for walking through that. So I'm going to quickly switch over to Langflow demo and Astra DB hybrid search. So to get started with, right? So it's super easy to create a DB in Astra. So astra.datastax.com, you go in, you create a DB, and then you create a collection. So this collection is a vector-enabled collection, and if you see here, we have partnered with NVIDIA and integrated in several points through your GenAI app building experience. So just from getting started, like we, for example, have NVIDIA's Embed QA embedding models, for instance, hosted on Astra, so that when you create a collection, you can automatically generate embeddings. You just bring in your data. That's it. You don't have to worry about any of these creating these embeddings and any of those, the preparation that you need to do for that. So that's how you create a collection. So in this scenario, I have a collection called products, and this products collection contains information about my store, which is it's a hypothetical sporting goods store. So quickly, if you see here, right, automatically you see when the collection is created and the data is input. I'll show you an example of that too. There is a dollar vector, which is the embedding that's created, and then there are these indexes ready for you already to use. So with that, I'm going to quickly switch gears to Langflow. If you have not seen Langflow before, so Langflow is a visual builder for enterprise AI agents and RAG applications. So it's developers love using Langflow, and it gives you a wide range, whether you want to build with a visual builder or to get deeper into the code as well. You can do both with Langflow. And just to get started, you create a new flow. If you see here at Langflow, you have a bunch of templates here to get started. Here's some more as well. And so whether you want to build an agent or whether you want to build a vector store RAG. In this scenario, for hybrid search, I'm just going to RAG and picking the hybrid search RAG template. That's it. Everything is already preloaded for you and everything is ready for you. So you just need to bring in your API keys and you're all good to go to get started. It's as simple as that to actually use hybrid search for your GenAI applications using Langflow. So here, let me just zoom in here a bit. Okay, so first, a pipeline on how this works. The end user's query comes in. Identify the keywords. Here in this scenario, I'm using an LLM to actually identify that. You can use other methods of identifying keywords, which is perfectly fine. You can create a new custom component and add that way as well. But hey, why not? Why not let LLM do the job here? So I'm using that. And now look at the Astra DB component here in Langflow. It encapsulates all the information that is needed for you to build your relevant, context-aware, and keyword-aware GenAI app. So it has got, I add the DB token here. And if you see here, there are a couple options here. There's a hybrid search option and a vector search option. For this example, I'm just choosing vector search to begin with. And then you take the response, and that's constructed through as a prompt with the LLM, and then that provides the human-like response. So that's your RAG flow that you saw. So now we're going to try doing this with just vector search. So in my store, so I'm going to ask a question. So do you have a lightweight rustic, because it's a sporting goods store? So in Langflow, if you see here, there is a playground with which you can actually have test it out to see how your GenAI app is actually responding, the workflow on like how this is built and how this is responding. So I go ahead and I trigger this message. Let's actually go to let's go to the canvas and see what exactly is happening. You can see that it quickly executed, but let's see some of the information that it passed. All right. So with vector search, yes, the top result is lacrosse stick, which is great, but then the second result is a baseball bat. That's not, in a semantic sense, yes, bat and stick, and they are kind of like close in a semantic similarity space, but not necessarily when you're trying to make recommendations and when you're trying to like uh, uh, give more accurate and important context as well. This is where you boost with hybrid search. So now let's switch on to hybrid search. Really, it's as easy as that. You just switch the mode to hybrid search. And then when you see here, you have the NVIDIA Reranker. See, it's already configured. It's already hosted. You're not doing anything. So you can bring your own Reranker if you like, but it's right here that you can just use it. And then let's bring in the lexical terms. And then now let's hit the playground. Let's see what it does. For this. Now let's look at the response here. So if you see the top results are all pretty much with lacrosse, because lacrosse is the keyword and it uses the vector search as well. And then and it passes through the NVIDIA Reranker, where NVIDIA Reranker identifies like, hey, these are the top results that is relevant to this, and it provides this. So I know this is a small example. It's a very qualitative example to kind of like show relevance, but when you're building production applications, you're going to have like a more quantitative measurement. So that's where like you would integrate it with LLM ops tools, and there are tools like Langsmith and Langwatch, Arise, and so on. So all those integrations are already available for you with Langflow, and you can monitor this through your experimentation and through production as well. So speaking of like quantitative measurements, so we actually ran a bunch of benchmarks and to see like what is the benefits, what is the improvement, and we saw like somewhere on an average of 18.5 to up to 45% in improvement in relevance. And then in addition to that, you just saw it's all packed in for you in Astra DB to build your GenAI app. So whether it's, you don't have to configure, you don't have to keep your indexes in a different place and you can just do all of those operations right there out of the bat from Astra DB, whether it's your data is like vector or non-vector or any metadata that's associated with it. You have the entire knowledge layer covered, and the GenAI platform, the GenAI stack on top of that includes like the tools, like with Langflow, there are like hundreds of integrations and tools already available, like up to date. There are so many more new recent tools that already exist with Langflow by the time you hear the news breaking out. For example, MCP. Langflow already supports MCP as a client and server. As you're hearing about these MCP things, it's already there in Langflow. You can build GenAI apps with MCP in Langflow. So all of those, it's an integration point for the GenAI ecosystem itself. And so you can just build these things right out of the box. And you saw how easy actually it was to build. You can drag and drop, build with Langflow. But hey, you want to have a code first approach, that's perfectly fine. So Astra DB provides you data API, which is a schemaless API, and you can use that along with the Astra Pi, which is a Python client, and you can perform the find and re-rank operations in a code first approach as well here. So there is a lot of information here on the docs where you can find on how you can get started and how you can build these things. So I'm going to like quickly give you a link to kind of like get started with Langflow here. You can download, you can get started, you can use Astra DB with Langflow. Try it out and let us know how your GenAI building experience is. So with that, I'm actually going to pass this over to Joe. And Joe, do you hear me? All right.
Hey,
Yes.
Sorry.
So
Actually a couple comments, right,
yeah,
on
go
that
ahead.
one. It was so awesome to see. And every time I see Preeti go through that demo, right, I think back to, my first experience I remember one of my best deployments ever because it was painful. I was on site for 6 months. It was a 600 tree decision tree. And again, a lot of that was similar use cases that Preeti was talking about, right? How do we automate something? How do we do a response? And you think about the power of where things are now. And again, I'm talking about, in that case, customer experience again, right? But just think about what she showed you, right? Drag and drop. And hey, I can try all these different things. And in that case, that was an example of maybe a retailer, right? And that's something, if you're in the retail world, you have all these different options to do things. And we're just super excited, as I mentioned, from NVIDIA's point of view. Hey, we want every retailer, everybody that's trying to service them, use our Reranker. However, we're giving you, again, the Lego parts, right? And the DataStax team and the Langflow team have done an excellent job of making it super easy for you all out there to go kick the tires, right? And to go try it and ultimately deliver the use case that you've probably been trying to do, because of stalled, maybe because of the accuracy component, right? And so how do you start to get into that bleeding of your intellectual data, what you really want to offer up? And super exciting to see that. And so hope everybody here tries that. And then the other thing that really excites me as I was watching her do this demo is like, there's this age old adage, right? Are we bringing AI to the data? Are we bringing data to the AI? Right. And I think with this interaction and what they have built, you kind of get this hybrid piece of both, right? And so for those of you that, that's sort of my one guiding thing of what we see a lot from customers is everybody's been trying Gen AI, right, for the use case. And then now as the technology continues to progress, you go through your buy, partner, build motions, but this is a great platform to go, hey, can I get that mix? Right? Can I get that mix of executing something that I've been trying for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, or heck, even 5 years ago? Technology is just at a point where it makes it easier, where you can hopefully deliver what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, and to Joe's point, NVIDIA helps us to bring all these enterprise ready capabilities like the guardrails and evaluators and re-rankers and embedding models and all of these to developers and enterprises to build end-to-end Gen AI applications. And it's just that again, I'm going to take this opportunity to also like thank Joe and NVIDIA team for the amazing partnership that we have. It's like it's a business case study pending on like how to run successful partnerships when we put interests of our users and customers together and build things out there. But while we're talking about this, so Joe, is there something like any advice that you have for organizations that are evaluating Gen AI projects? What do you think should they be prioritizing to get the maximum business impact?
Yeah, I'm sure, depending on the audience here, right? If you're a developer versus business versus et cetera, right? Ultimately, it's probably safe to assume your company, right, is trying some Gen AI use case, right? And so it's kind of one of those things around which ones are worth sticking with. Fair, right? And so the advice is always like around, and this is more of a generic advice, right, to that capacity. But sooner or later, obviously we believe the tech, right? And you could see that DataStax is helping deliver it to the market in a simpler way of drag and drop, which is really amazing, right? Hopefully you can hit the ROI, right? And so Preeti, that's overall. We've definitely, since I literally remember when we were talking about Gen AI versus not as an industry,
Yeah.
right? And then now it becomes okay, where do I start to see that business transformation? And are we clear about that? And that's always the fun within wherever you work, right? Because everybody can do something with AI, Gen AI agents as they come, right? Could be really important to you, let alone if it's digital twins, et cetera. Then the question is, hey, what's the benefit for the group and the team? And how do we make those incremental steps? Right. And I'd say that's probably one of the ones we've seen. Like I remember seeing a bunch of, hey, here's 100 use cases we want to do at that so-and-so, et cetera. But when it's 100, then you're starting to bite off a lot, right? And so which ones make the most sense? Which ones I'm already using in this case, right? Cassandra, right? Or I'm exploring some type of data accuracy. And can I get that, achieve the results, celebrate that win, and then move on to the next one?
Yep. You
Right.
make a very good point there. Exactly, right? Like have the right use case in mind. And then instead of like this is what I see and what I would advise folks to do. Like instead of trying to, oh, I'm going to build this whole platform for my entire organization, but rather start with the Gen AI use case and be empowered by the knowledge layer. Be empowered with tools like Langflow and NVIDIA NeMo retrievers and so on. Now build this out, test it out, iterate, show value right away. These are things that can help you show value right away to your stakeholders, to your end users. There are easy options to deploy these things in production. Just put this out there in production and keep iterating. So that's where like all these things help you do that. And when you're doing these things, like keep in mind on all the things that's already made ready for you in this process, like agents, for instance, like what Joe mentioned. Agents, for instance, are like the topmost use case that's being built using Langflow. And how are your agents going to be accurate? So if you have just agents are good at like decision, analyzing, planning, and then taking action. But if these agents are not connected to your data, then it's just like a very generic thing. It's just a very generic activity that it does. It cannot take informed decisions. So right, you have all those right tools to actually explore and build and to show value immediately, to accelerate into production. All of these things being able to be done easily. So those are some of the areas that that I would like really recommend folks to try out, to explore and build more.
Yeah,
So
and I'm gonna have to riff on that agent comment, right?
yeah,
Obviously important to NVIDIA, but this literally reminds me of 2010. I was building workflows, right? I was building workflows between back office applications, right? Using, hard coding things, right? Deterministic coding, right? And I think back to, how hard those projects were, but super critical to an enterprise.
yeah.
Super, super critical to the enterprise. And that's sort of where we're starting to see with that agent wave is, hey, can I start to automate and speed up some of these tasks that kept going back and forth, kind of need the good data. And that's what's super exciting, right? Most of the data you have is your intellectual property,
Yep.
right? And you want to make sure it doesn't go out in the wild. It's only staying within your company and you're able to, but at least search, re-rank, and expose it at the right moments of time so you can make better decisions, right? And that's the super exciting thing about it. I keep going back to, I literally remember, IT ops workflow automation, or do we outsource it? Do we do this? And then now, hey, it's sort of an agent, but I still need to tap into other data sources, right? And that's where the linkage of all this ecosystem, right, can hopefully help businesses improve, right, and ultimately get us all to use AI in that capacity. So
Yeah, you spoke about your intellectual property, your proprietary data, and that brings in the information. Like even just for the demo that I was showing, right? So the LLMs have already seen all of that public data set. You might not like really even see that improvement in the relevance that you see, but the moment when you plug this in with your proprietary data, you're going to see the boost in relevance that these capabilities bring, because that's something that the LLM has not seen and has not been trained on. And when you bring in that context in with tools like Astra DB hybrid search and rerankers and like reasoning models and all of those things, you're going to see like a boost in the relevance that comes up with your data as well. So we do have, I see a bunch of questions that's popping up. So probably we're just going to steer a bit to answer some of those questions. So let's see. All right. So let's. Okay. So will any of these services change now that you were acquired by IBM? So we are very excited to be acquired by IBM, and all of these tools that you're seeing, those are super it'll be like, continue to be supported, and this is going to be it's a super customer focused management here. So does the solution also re-rank does the solution also re-rank retrieve documents from web search solutions like Tavily? So yes, so you have integrations that's already available in Langflow for Tavily and so on. So the thing is that this is based off on the Astra data source. And if your results and things are going to be like, the documents that are going to be stored in Astra DB, you can run these Reranker. In the future versions, you will also see where you can just connect external information, external lexical search as well, and then go with that. So how can I improve Langflow's performance during retrieval? So there are several tools with which you can actually improve retrieval using Langflow. So and one is that, hey, yes, we just saw an example like hybrid search, re-ranking. Then there are more like better system prompts that you provide, so you can get like more specific using the right reasoning models. And for example, if you're building like AI agents and things and so on, having like specific task for each of these agents, and then sending that to a more reasoning models. Then there are like a lot of like aspects that you can use. You can test it out with like different LLMs, and you can try with those things as well. So there are like a bunch of tools that's actually already available for you on and there are even nuanced techniques, right? Like for instance, like, hey, you might send a lot more information to the re-ranker. Say like, instead of just sending 5, you might send like 20 or 30 or 50 and so on, and then choose the top 5 so that the re-ranker can actually have a good set to work based off on. So you have a good range of tweaks that you can do, and the easy part is like with Langflow, you can experiment all of those. So please feel free to add some questions that you would ask about NeMo and NVIDIA services as well for Joe. So we'll be super happy to go over those as well. So can you use hybrid search via the data API? Yes, you very much can. You can very much use it through the data API, which I was just sharing, through which you can use Astra DB hybrid search. So any plans to support N8N? So that is actually an interesting point of discussion. So N8N is a workflow automation tool. Langflow is a AI native tool for developers and technical users to build Gen AI applications. So when you're having an AI centric, AI native AI applications that you're building, Langflow works out pretty well for your AI agents and RAG based applications and so on, for things that you're taking into production. So is hybrid search available in HCD? Not at this time. Does hybrid search work well with unstructured data? Yes, it very well does. So the data which I've been using, that's one of the examples that you saw, but like many of the things that I had there, it was just unstructured data. Langflow can actually make it super easy for you to just chunk and put in this data, and it's right there for you to run a hybrid search on that. Joe, you were about to comment?
That's the exciting, whoever asked that question, that's the gold mine, folks. Right? Most of your intellectual property, right, is probably unstructured in some way, shape, or form, right? And half of it's tied in people's brains and all this stuff, right? But imagine, going back to Preeti gave examples, I literally remember I was working at Cisco way back in the day, and I remember the first Google search box that they were trying to, but it wasn't in the right format, so we couldn't use anything internally. And then we tried, I think at that point, SharePoint or some other offering, right? But imagine that all that data is unstructured, right? Whether it's in an image, in an email, in a just interesting format. And the beautiful thing about where technology is, and then obviously stitched together by Preeti and her team, is you can embed those unstructured data so that I can search and re-rank it and be more accurate. And that's super exciting, right? Because think of that unlock for whatever enterprise you're working at, whatever startup, et cetera, right? That unlock, that's your gold mine to make faster decisions. Sorry, I got all excited.
No, please share your thoughts. No, please do. So Is vector search applied first or BM25 on the corpus? It is possible to skip either vector search or BM25 before feeding to the Reranker to see which one is suited more. That's actually a very good question. So the vector search and BM25, so these two searches are run. So it's not like, you are like narrowing down through it. These two searches are run and then it's passed to the Reranker. Duplication is removed. And then the Reranker kind of like sorts out which is best, so that the Reranker has the information from both these contexts. And the Reranker, like, it's a state-of-the-art Reranker that uses like LLM, fine-tune LLM, and so on to. So that's why one of the places I was just mentioning, you can return a lot more results as well, and ask the Reranker to narrow it down so that the Reranker can do the job in identifying, like, what's the best, what's the most relevant ones. And yes, so in my example, you saw how I switched off. I showed you a part where I just showed with vector search, and then I switched on hybrid search. So these two indexes are existing separately. It's part of the collection, but they're existing separately. And so yes, you can easily test that out as well. So with Langflow, so with how does the current MCP component work? So the current MCP component has, like, you have the server component and you have the client component. So with Langflow, you can, like, choose to add your own layer of like authentication and security, and you can choose to, like, expose which parts, what you want to. You can use the right tools, and you can expose what parts that you want to make available. So does Langflow handle chunking, or does the data API? So Langflow does handle chunking. Langflow provides you the ability to do that. And with data API, so the Astra that you just saw, where I showed you like how to upload your, they create a collection. It gives you an option to actually upload your data. And when you upload your data, it automatically performs chunking for you. So you can do it through the Astra path, and you can also do it through Langflow as well. So depending upon the path that you go, you can perform. And of course you can do on the client side as well, as per your need. But those knobs, the entire data pipeline preparation, all of those things are already set there ready for you. So the last question that we have is that, is the AI native Langflow, will I be able to construct a full flow by just giving it a prompt? That's a very interesting question. So actually, those are some of the areas that we are working on, where you can just give a prompt and spin up flows. Of course, there are like so many vibe coding tools that gives you, and that's an area which I'm personally very, very excited about, on how quickly these apps and code and things that can be spun up and use Langflow in a way to actually. How do you iterate through it, right? How do you get, so once you have like what it is there, but that's not usually never your end product. You kind of like iterate through this, and so that's something great that you would love to do, and so that's one of the areas where we are like excited about. So thank you so much for your questions. So any closing thoughts, Joe?
I have a ton of closing thoughts.
All right, let's go.
Start using it. No. So hopefully that gave everybody in the audience, right, and tell your friends, right, an essence of like this unlock. I'm going to use that word, right, is because, as you can tell, like I'm literally thinking back to all my old clients from my contact center and collaboration days. Wow, remember when we were trying to do X, right? And that's my one guidance, going back to your technology's now at a point where it makes sense, where you can unlock all these philosophical use cases, right? And Preeti gave a lot of examples of that. And so I implore everybody to try it, right? And obviously on behalf of NVIDIA, we're looking at, we're here for you. If you're a buy, partner, build, you want to go to build.nvidia.com and go build this yourself, etc. But if you don't want to go that deep, it's a great place to start. Yeah. Right. Start with what Preeti and the team has shown you. Right. And as she mentioned, stitching all those things, you can upload the data, you can do this. And how do you do more with your data? And that's sort of what excites us. Right. Because that gets us to the agents. It gets us to someday robotics. Preeti's first question for me. Right. How do we get to that point? But we gotta be able to unlock that data. Right. So we can make the better decisions, better automation before we can get to all those things. Right. And so.
Yep. So thanks for sharing that, Joe. And I recommend you to go try Astra DB hybrid search with NVIDIA Retriever NeMo Reranking. All as part of Astra DB. Go to astra.datastax.com and spin up your database. Go install Langflow. Try it out. These are some products that we are very, very, very excited for you to try to build and take these things into production. And please reach out to us if you want to talk further. There are more links here for you to reach out and to refer more. So thank you. Bye, everyone.